It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a huge football Friday night. Good to have you with us. Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes at our studios in downtown Columbia, where it is smoking hot this afternoon. Will Pelagic has made the trip out to Texas to cover Clemson and Texas A&M. He is located in Houston, Texas. We'll get with him in just a moment. I'll have the Gamecocks and the Georgia Bulldogs tomorrow afternoon, as will the Pro, and will handle the Tigers and the Aggies. A reminder tomorrow, as part of your game day enjoyment and information, make sure you check out our coverage on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. Follow us on Twitter, as we will be providing observations and opinions and important statistical updates. One thing we do not do on Twitter at games, we do not give you a play-by-play breakdown of every single snap. I think there's plenty of ways for you to keep up with the game from a standpoint of how it's being played out. But important moments, statistical updates, injuries, things of that nature, we certainly give you that on our Twitter feed. And then our live Periscope after the game, as soon as we come back up from the post-game interviews, a great way to catch up on what the head coaches and the players were saying after their games. So we are set for what should be an exciting Friday night of high school football across the state. David Shelton will be here in a little bit. And then, of course, tomorrow we have got South Carolina and Georgia at 3:30 on CBS. The Gamecocks are still 10-point underdogs, looking to get a win over Georgia that would give them the lead in the series this decade. It's 4-4 this decade, but, of course, Georgia has dominated over the history of the series with 50 wins, including 3 in a row. But this is a chance for Will Muschamp to score his second win over a ranked opponent. His only win over a ranked opponent with South Carolina was in 2016 when they beat an 18th-ranked Tennessee team. And Clemson, of course, a 12-point favorite out at Kyle Field at College Station. Clemson has never won at Kyle Field, hasn't been out there a whole lot. Tigers have only beaten Texas A&M once in the history of this series, which is 4 games old. But things have kind of turned. I mean, this, of course, is a Clemson team that is among the nation's elite. This is a Texas A&M team that's in kind of a rebuilding mode with Jimbo Fisher, now the head coach. Should be a very interesting game from the standpoint of how quickly has Fisher brought that team along, and how will Clemson handle with, basically a veteran team, a few youngsters here and there, handle the spotlight and being in front of 102,000. Matt Connolly of the State Newspaper had an interesting stat today in his story on Clemson leading up to the game, and something like the Tigers have never played in front of 102,000 people before, so that would be a first. And in crowds on the road of 85,000 or more, the Tigers are like 4-9 or something. They have a losing record in that setting. So, but this is a Clemson team that's been through it a lot. The ups and downs and the big settings and the big games, I don't think they'll have any trouble handling their surroundings, as Will Pelagic now joins us from Houston. And you saw a bunch of Clemson fans on your way out there, huh?
Lot of orange corn. To borrow from our friend Pete Yannity, there's an orange invasion in the Lone Star State as we get ready for this game here on Saturday. And basically the talk of the town right now, even with the start of the NFL season, with the Texans playing on the road in New England, this is the game that really has gotten a lot of the attention here in the Lone Star State. There are people who are talking about making the trip up this weekend here from Houston. It's only about an hour and a half to 2 hours away, just northwest of downtown Houston. So it's a lot of Aggies in this town. It's one of their biggest alumni bases in the state. And when you think about the Aggies under Kevin Sumlin, they played a lot of big games when Johnny Manziel was here, but really, they haven't played very many since, I would say, 2012 or 2013, and it's the biggest game at Cal Field since then. They're basically planning for a sellout. They're planning for a lot of traffic from here all the way up to College Station, because the environment up in College Station is very similar to that of Clemson. It's not a very, very big town. A lot of the people who go to College Station for games come from elsewhere, whether it's Houston, Dallas, or elsewhere and the like across the state. San Antonio also a little bit of a short shot up there to College Station. But it's two teams who don't know each other very well, but two coaches who certainly do. You mentioned the 4-4 record with Georgia and South Carolina. That's the record Jimbo Fisher has against Clemson, and he was the head coach of Florida State. He has, of course, lost the last 3 times he's faced Dabo Swinney, but that, of course, was preceded by a 3-game win streak. So it's been a streak of runs, and as I've said the entire week, I still think the advantage is on Dabo Swinney and the Tigers, because I think they know more about what they're going to see schematic-wise from the Aggies versus what the Aggies will do with new personnel under Jimbo Fisher. It'll be the first time he utilizes it in an FBS contest.
Well, I think also the incentive that Clemson has, anytime they see a little patch on a uniform that has SEC on it, that's a scalp they must have. They want that, especially early, and just solidify their position as they head toward another playoff. That's the key there. As far as Texas A&M is concerned, one of the key points that I don't know whether the coaching staff has addressed this, but we've seen this before in the last few years, and some of that personnel that's still there, is if you jump on Texas A&M quick, they tend to kind of the crowd kind of somehow turned against them.
Yes,
so if Clemson can take control early, they'll play among 102,000 fans, but only the corner that has orange in it would be making noise.
Yeah, having been down here for at least a half a dozen games, it gets loud at the beginning. Of course, when they do the varsity sway back and forth that makes the press box shake, it gets very, very loud, and they cheer in unison. But they're fickle. They will turn on the team like a dime. And the one thing, too, Corn, that I think is getting a lot of attention is, of course, Clemson's dual quarterback system. I was in the airport watching some of the pundits nationally start to talk about this game, and Desmond Howard is a man after your own heart, because he was very much attacking the use of the dual quarterback system. He says that he believes Trevor Lawrence has to earn his stripes more, because Kelly Bryant, quote, has played a lot of football for Clemson. I don't know if I would count 15 starts in a collegiate career a lot of football, even though he did do a lot of mop-up duty for Deshaun Watson. In my mind, like I said before earlier this week, they feel pretty good about where they're at with both of these quarterbacks. They feel they can run the whole complement of their offense with these two guys, and I think it's just a matter of which person you want behind the wheel. They feel like they can go very, very far with both of them.
Going back to Matt Connolly's tweet about Clemson's record. I want to make sure I got this right. In front of 100,000 fans, Tigers, first time they'll play in front of 100,000, in front of 85,000 plus, 4-9 all time, and 1-6 on the road. But again, this is a Clemson team that's used to being in these big settings. I'm not sure that the noise and the excitement around that stadium is going to impact them one iota. If anything impacts them, it would be, maybe Texas A&M being a little more improved on defense, just because they hired a very good defensive coordinator, a guy that Dabo Swinney highly respects. And they do have an offense. They've always had an offense. They do have an offense with a quarterback who is a very good athlete. He can throw it and he can run it a little bit. And they've got an excellent running back who can get a lot of yards if you give him a crease. And, if they try and run wide against this Clemson defense, they'll probably get stuffed, because Clemson runs so well defensively. I think you got to run right at a really fast, athletic defensive front. If you can block them a little bit, I think you got to run right at them, just like South Carolina and Georgia getting ready. The Gamecocks are to face this Georgia defensive front, which is not the defensive front they had last year, but still very good. I think South Carolina pros just got to line up and kind of run right at them and try to negate the athleticism and speed that they might have up front.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, Corn, because I've vacillated on this, because I think at some point a team like Georgia, because of the receivers South Carolina has, and I know they've been preached about this, I don't see why South Carolina in some quarters don't throw on first down and set up the run via the pass, almost opposite way you usually think.
All right, we're off and running ourselves here on Sports Talk on a busy Friday night. David Shelton coming up. We'll talk high school football and a bunch more. Be right back.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
It's our Friday football frenzy here on Sports Talk. Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, and Will Pelagic getting you ready for the weekend. Coming up, we'll have our football filibuster with Governor Jim Hodges and Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer. We'll have our professional help, our picks from Lee Sterling, the Sterling picks of the night coming your way, the full Monty on NASCAR. in hour number 2. Also, a visit from George Bryan III as we check in on birdies and bogeys around South Carolina, and also update what's happening in the PGA playoff tournament, which they played early today to try and beat the weather. And Xander Schauffele comes out the leader midway through that tournament. We'll update everything that's going on there for you in a little bit. So we have got a busy show. Will has a couple of interviews as well with guys who cover tomorrow's opponents, Georgia and Texas A&M. So we'll get a final look inside those two programs. It's Friday night as well. That means high school football here across the state of South Carolina. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid, but the football should still be very, very good. No one better to give us a preview than David Shelton of the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Well, I have my belly full, and I'm ready for football.
Well,
have my pregame meal. I'm good to go. Don't
fall asleep out there. It's going to be hot and humid. You know how that can affect one's ability to stay awake.
Not me. I'll be fired up.
The game I'm looking at tonight, there's several really good ones across the state. This Harding, North Carolina game at Gaffney. This is the team that won a state championship last year for the first time since the 50s. It's the team that has the much ballyhooed athlete Crouch, who may or may not play because he's been out with an injury the last couple of games. But I know they got off to kind of a slow start this year, but this will be a good opportunity for Gaffney to show itself against an opponent from across the state.
Absolutely, and these border battles, as they call them, are really fun to cover. They're fun games because it kind of pits the best in one state against the best in another state. Fort Dorchester, they played 2 out-of-state opponents already this year. And Mallard Creek and Dutch Fork would have been an unbelievable contest had we been able to get that one in. So this is a good test for Gaffney. This is a Gaffney team that's capable of contending for a state championship. So this will be a good test for them to kind of see how they measure up. Harding is not what they were a year ago, but still a very good football program, very good football team. So should be a good matchup.
Another game I really like is going to be in the upstate tonight, and it's Abbeville at Southside Christian. Now, I know Abbeville has had no trouble steamrolling its opponents so far, but Southside Christian's got that really good quarterback, right? This could be a little bit of a test for them.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think Southside Christian's biggest thing is getting the ball and stopping Abbeville on offense. And getting the ball so they can throw that thing around, because they like to throw it around the yard a good bit. Abbeville is very good defensively, but has not seen this kind of offense with Schertzberg and those receivers, the way they throw it around, spread it around to a lot of people. But, again, it's all going to come back to can Southside stop Abbeville, because offensively Abbeville is a machine. They're averaging, 50-something points a game, and they haven't been slowed down. I thought Emerald last week would give them a pretty competitive battle. A lot of people feel like Emerald's good enough to win the upper state in their division, but Abbeville had no problem, and that's the thing with Abbeville. You got to get that offense off the field, because they get that ball, they don't give it back, and they punch it in.
Well, 2 teams undefeated early on. The Battle of Sumter. How do you see that, Sumter and Lakewood?
I think Lakewood's an interesting story because they have a really good quarterback that's a great athlete, can really run the football and get up, make plays with his legs. But I don't know that Lakewood is. I could be wrong, but I don't know that Lakewood is going to be ready for Sumter. I think Sumter is a legitimate 5A lower state contender this year, and this will be it's going to be a good battle and a good community type battle because both teams are really good. But my gut just tells me that Sumter's just a little bit better.
Greetings, David, from the Lone Star State. I enjoyed your piece on the Carrion Joyner heir apparent at Fort Dorchester. It seems that I don't want to say the transition has been seamless, but it seems to me that they have not necessarily lost the kind of step people thought they were going to lose.
Yeah, I think what the thing about Sav is, and in the story, he talked a lot about having the opportunity to play a lot last year behind Joyner because they got so far ahead of people, and LaPrade would pull his starters, so that would allow Sav to really still play against number one defenses because teams were trying to still slow him down. So he got that opportunity to get his feet wet, so it was a little more confident coming into this season. And he's not a great passer yet, their passing game has not come together yet. They got a lot of new receivers, but he runs the football very well, and he's very smart. He's a great kid to talk to, very intelligent, and feels, he has a good sense of what's expected of him. And they'll be tested down the road. They got Berkeley next week, and that'll be a good test for them. But he really has done a very good job in the early part of the season.
Where are you tonight, my friend?
I am headed over to Cane Bay to watch Ashley Ridge in Cane Bay, and this Ashley Ridge team is just a weird group. They played very well last week and beat Stratford. They played very well against Berkeley, except a bunch of penalties, and they lost that game. So we're kind of waiting to see if they're going to be one of those teams in the upper echelon. And in Cane Bay, they've lost to West Ashley and Fort Dorchester, two pretty good teams. So they're going to be 0-3 if they don't play well tonight. And then the other big game down there in the Low Country would be, the traditional game between Somerville and Stratford. I think Somerville's their program's in a much better situation right now. But it's always fun when those two teams get together. There'll be a big crowd there for sure.
All right, sir. We'll talk to you tonight on the high school scoreboards. We thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Take care, my friend. And we remind everybody, high school scoreboards across the state tonight, 10, 10:30, and 11 o'clock, available on our stations across the state, some of them, and also, of course, on our Periscope on Twitter. You can catch the scoreboards there. Some other good games tonight, at least on paper. T.L. Hanna, Belton Honey, Path, Dutch Fork at Boiling Springs. North Augusta at Blythewood could be interesting. Richland Northeast and Spring Valley, neighborhood rivals there. May River at Hilton Head. Both teams are 3-0. Lakeview at Dillon. That is a intra-county rivalry game there. North Central at Lamar. Hemingway at Carvers Bay. Andrew Jackson at Great Falls. Great Falls is 3-0. When's the last time Great Falls was 3-0 on the season? Remember to catch the scoreboards tonight, 10, 10:30, and 11 o'clock. All right, as far as the second round of the Sports Talk Pick'em Challenge, we look ahead to this weekend. We have a three-way tie for the lead. No, I take that back. We have a single leader. The bad boy, Alan Smothers, 5-0 last weekend. I went 4-1. Pro went 4-1. Brian Leonard, producer extraordinaire, went 4-1. Let's see. The losers, the big losers were Will and Matt the Newsman.
Still over 500. Come on.
The Big Kahuna and Fran the Money Man, they all went 3-2, and Kev Cohen bringing up the rear at the 2-3. So we look ahead to this week. Southern Cal at Stanford. Stanford is favored by 6, and it looks like they got kind of a split decision here between Stanford and Southern Cal. I'm taking Stanford. Will, you like Southern Cal getting the points, and so do you, Pro. Penn State at Pitt. Renewal of this rivalry. Pitt is getting 9 at home, and let's see. I'm the only one taking Pitt. I like those points.
Enjoy it.
I think you said that same thing last week about South Carolina.
I think Appalachian State put the fear of God in Penn State. They'll play.
Kentucky at Florida, trying to break the 31-game streak, 13.5. Florida's favored. And let's see, most of us are taking Kentucky. Yeah, pretty much an even split. There's a few with Kentucky, a few with Florida. I've got Kentucky. Pro's got Kentucky. Will's got Kentucky. That's scary. USC, Georgia. Gamecocks are getting 10. And I've got taking the 10. Pro's taking the 10. Will's taking the Bulldogs. And most everybody's taking USC. Fran Halloran is taking Georgia. Matt the Newsman is taking Georgia. Clemson and A&M, everybody is taking the Tigers except, of course, the Big Kahuna. He wouldn't pick Clemson if they were fighting the Nazis. He would not pick Clemson if his life depended on it. I can tell you that. So he's taking A&M. Everybody else is taking Clemson, laying the points. We'll find out what the Gov and the Lieutenant Gov think about it when we come back. All right, welcome back into Sports Talk. Here on a Friday night, it is the point of the week that we all wait for patiently with great excitement, however, because it's the time that we find out from two of the greatest football minds and politicians in South Carolina history.
Okay, you've added the politicians part.
Well, of course. Former Governor Jim Hodges, former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer. Good to have them with us once again. Week 1 behind us. Andre, you're no rookie anymore. You're 4-1. You've got the early lead in the competition.
Yeah, had I not gone with those daggum Tigers, I'd have had 5-0.
That's what you get.
They barely missed that spread, but the governor was.
That's what you get.
They barely missed that spread, but the governor was.
That's what you get.
They barely missed that spread, but the governor was.
That's what you get. Well, let's see if we can get that rolling real quick here, Brian. We're obviously having a trouble with. We had to pre-record because the governor is traveling at this hour, so we pre-recorded last night. We're having a glitch with one of our computers. Gee, what a surprise! We'll give it a moment here and see if we can get it back on time. We do want you to hear what the governor and the lieutenant governor had to say. You heard Andre Bauer say that he made the mistake by taking Clemson and giving those points. I warned everybody Furman would find a way to get within the points, to cover. I guess it's what is it from their standpoint? Is that not a backdoor cover? Whatever it is, they beat the spread, and so it goes against Clemson's mark on that. Okay, are we ready to pick it back up? Let's go back to the governor and the lieutenant governor.
Well, I got two things to say here. One is Bryce Love's parents are both USC South Carolina grads, and he managed to get a Stanford, so I'm still irritated about that. And the second thing is Andre is wrong. There is a pro team, and it's Southern Cal out there. So given their history, I think it's pretty safe to say that they have skirted the rules many a time, and I think that I'm going to take Southern Cal on the point.
Hey, let me ask both of you, since you, of course, both are South Carolina fans, how do you like the new South Carolina script on the helmet and sort of the apparent move by USC to some degree to kind of rebrand itself with that Carolina script? Andre?
Well, I like it. I got my start back in 1983. My mom used to drop me off at the football games, and I would go out there and hustle bumper stickers. And I sold peanuts at the game. In 84, when I was old enough to drive, I sold bumper stickers that said next year is here. And as they went 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, I got all the way to 9-0, beating Florida State. I was still out there selling my bumper stickers. And I remember that old script, and I always loved it. I thought it looked so collegiate, and I've loved it since I was a little boy. My dad took me a game when there were uprights only on one side, and so I have a long love for University of South Carolina, and the nostalgic stuff especially hits a soft spot with me getting ready to tap on the door of 50 next year. And so I love seeing them kind of go back to some of the old designs.
How about you, Governor?
Well, I was already out of law school in 1983, so Andre is making me feel really old. But I love them. I thought there was a certain attitude in the Joe Morrison era that is sort of a coolness factor with South Carolina, and I really do like the idea that they're reaching back into that era to give the helmets. That's a great idea.
I love that they're both aligned with me on that. That's very nice.
All right, let's go. And I have to stand out on the limb by myself. I mean, it's not that I don't like it. I just liked the Block C and the traditional Gamecock
it's over
bird on the side of it. I thought that was a very cool look when it was done properly. But anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter what it looks like on the helmet. What's inside that helmet, inside that uniform. So just to recap, Andre, you took Stanford?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And Governor, you took
Southern Cal.
I took the points in Southern Cal.
You took Trojans getting 6. Okay. Let's go to Penn State at Pitt, a renewal of this rivalry, so to speak.
Backyard brawl.
And let's see, Pitt getting 9 at home. Governor Hodges, Pitt getting 9 at home.
Well, I think Pitt actually has a few Appalachian State transfers on their team, so this ought to be a tough one for Penn State this week. I'm going to take Pitt in the points because it's a rivalry game. I know they're not all that good, but they're playing at Pitt, and it's a rivalry game. And I think Southern Cal is really missing their offensive coordinator, who's I guess now the head coach at Mississippi State. So I'll take Pittman points.
All right. You mean Penn State missing their OC who's at Mississippi State?
Joe Moorhead.
Yeah, Joe Moorhead. Yeah.
Yeah. Andre, your thoughts?
I'm with the governor on this one. Penn State is, almost had a scare last week, but I think with the points, I'm going to take Pitt.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Kentucky at Florida. My goodness, what is it, 31 in a row, I think, that Kentucky has lost to Florida. They thought they were going to win last year. Didn't happen. Andre, it's the Gators giving up 13.5 at home.
I'm gonna go with the Gators. I'm going to go with, I always kind of pull for Kentucky just to see the underdogs, kind of like Vanderbilt. When Gamecocks aren't playing, Kentucky aren't playing them, I like to see them do well because the smaller schools always have a more difficult time. But I think in the end, even with the points, Florida's going to pull this one out.
Yeah, it is 31 in a row, the fourth longest streak in an uninterrupted series in NCAA history. You would think over 31 years, Governor, you'd find a way to win.
Well, I don't know if they'll win, but I'm going to take the points in Kentucky because it's early in the year, a conference game. Kentucky's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to take Kentucky in the points. They'll keep it under 10.
Okay, very good. Let's go to the locals now here in Columbia, 3:30 kickoff on CBS. I know the two of you will be in your prime seats. Well, maybe you will be. It's going to be hot once again. Spread is 10 points. Gamecocks getting 10 at home. Governor Hodges.
I think 10 points is too many. Again, early in the season, rivalry game. Carolina's offense looked terrific last week. I think the defense is going to have to step it up. But, I think Georgia likely wins this game, but I think it's going to be under a touchdown. So I'll take the Gamecocks and the points.
All right. Andre?
Well, just to clarify, when you've been governor, you got box seats. When you've been lieutenant governor, you're boxed out of seats.
Well, give me a call. We can help you out if you need seats.
I'll be parking Jim Hodges' car for the game. But I'm with him. I'm a Gamecock through and through, and I think with the points, you never know. The Gamecocks have pulled this out. This rivalry, South Carolina's done so well over the years. Home game, they could right out win this game, but with the points, it's a no-brainer. You take the Cox.
All right, and let's get to Clemson at Texas A&M. The Tigers are laying 12. Andre?
I'm going to take A&M on this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Governor?
Always bet against Jimbo Fisher. Florida State has proven that he got out of town just ahead of the sheriff. That team is no good anymore to lose that bad to Virginia Tech, and that is all on Jimbo Fisher leaving the cupboard bare. So I'm going to take the Tigers to win this one by 20 points or 21 because Fisher's such a bad coach.
Wow.
He
is.
Wowzy.
No
hey, look,
love for Bo.
You got 3 different picks. Anybody interested in amending, Andre?
No, I'm good. I like this one. This week's going to give you a clear delineation of who's got their hand on the ball, no pun intended.
Separation Saturday.
Governor, I think you've got a very serious opponent over here.
He's been doing his homework. He's very good. I'm certainly happy to have this sort of competition. Andre's terrific.
Okay, our football filibuster with Governor Hodges and Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer. Apologize for the little computer snafu. They always happen at the worst times, do they not? Holy cow. Wow. Mm-hmm. Will, can I get another wow from you?
Wow. Wow.
Governor Hodges is not a fan of Jimbo Fisher.
Well, Jimbo Fisher will just flash his championship ring from the championship he won at Florida State. So I'm a bad coach here. I got a ring.
Yes, indeed.
I find it all very, very fascinating, just the dichotomy between those two. It's going to be very interesting to see that play out on Saturday.
Yep. Those two are quite the pair. We appreciate them being with us. Jim Hodges and Andre Bauer, recently married Andre Bauer. I guess he broke a lot of hearts out there across the state of South Carolina. All you eligible ladies out there hoping to become Mrs. Andre Bauer, you missed out. And if you've seen the newly minted Mrs. Andre Bauer, you could certainly understand why you missed out. All right, we'll be right back with some Sterling picks.
Time to put your money where your mouth is. Put up your feelings, let's fight it out. He's a hustler. If you don't got cash, you won't be getting no skills. But if you don't got money, you want some fun. If you don't got cash, you won't be getting no. He's a gambler. At the house running young and then we got change.
Show them the next item up for bid.
Okay, we've heard from the rank amateurs. Time now to hear from the professional. We get professional help here on Sports Talk. Everybody needs some professional help from time to time, no matter what they are doing. In this particular case, we need more insight on this weekend of college and NFL games. We welcome in, of course, the one, the only Lee Sterling to Sports Talk for this edition of Sterling Picks. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Yeah. What a card we have this week. I mean, so far we haven't had a week of football, so I'm ready.
Hey, did your Miami team make it back to South Florida, or they just decide to go somewhere else? My goodness.
Diverted back somewhere else. You know, it's bad enough to lose, but we lost to Clemson. I said, okay, we lost to a much better team, but I don't think LSU was Clemson. That's what hurt the most.
Boy, the state of Florida right now with football. I mean, it wasn't too many years ago you couldn't touch the state of Florida, the Big Three, and now, I mean, they're puny.
Yeah, I do think that Florida State and Miami will improve. I mean, it was awful. I mean, the penalties, 8 penalties for 75 yards in the first half, just destroyed them. I do think you got to take this into account when you're wagering on games. There will be a lot of teams that will improve the most from the first to the second game. There'll be 5-6 teams that will win 5 or 6 in a row after losing that first game. So don't base all your decisions on one week. Is Miami and Florida State, are they top 10 teams? No. But they could bounce back and get on a roll. So the biggest surprise team, I thought they were going to be down a couple notches, and I was shocked. I think they look better than last year so far, was Oklahoma. I think Kyler Murray is fantastic.
Absolutely. All right, let's tell folks where they can go to get your inside information over the weekend.
Let's go to the website, ParamountSports.com. We started off the year for our phone service. We went 6-3 on Saturday, including hitting on our 2 big 30-unit plays. So if you want to get involved, these are our bread and butter, our 30 and 35-unit plays, 40 and 17 runs since early in the year last year. So we're going to release 3 of them this weekend. Use coupon code SAVE100. We've got a package from now through Monday, October 1st. That's 4 weeks of games, just $397 if you use coupon code SAVE100. It's all available at ParamountSports.com.
All right, let's get at it. Let's begin with Mississippi State, favored by 9 against Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas State, I have some real reservations with this team now. Bill Snyder is using 2 different quarterbacks now, and I haven't seen that from him since early in his tenure. Kansas State also played a poor Vanderbilt team last year with just a 5-7 record, and they struggled. They only won that game 14-7. It could have gone either way. They only outgained Vandy by 6 yards in that contest. Now they got to face a team here in Mississippi State that has a quarterback that's 6'5", 230. Biggest quarterback they have on the roster weighs 215. So tough to emulate a guy that's that big and runs a 4.4, 4.5 40. And I just think it's a different level of talent. I love that Mississippi State front seven. I think they're probably in top 5 in that front seven. So I like State. I think they win this game easy, surprisingly, 31-14.
You're saying Mississippi State?
Yeah, Mississippi State. Yeah,
off to a good start with their new coach. Is their quarterback still suspended, or is he back this week?
No, he's back. Fitzgerald's back.
Okay, looking forward to seeing what he's got. Okay, let's don't waste any time. Let's get to the locals, and we'll go with USC first because that's the earlier game. USC getting 10 points at home against Georgia. Is the wrong team favored here?
Well, Georgia beat South Carolina last year 24-10, but remember, Deebo Samuel did not play in the game, and he's obviously their number 1 weapon. Sony Michel and also Nick Chubb graduated and looked like they might have a void at running back. And James Cook looked like he might be the guy, but now he's going to be suspended for the first half of the game. Also, you got the fact that Brian McClendon, South Carolina offensive coordinator, coached at Georgia 2010, 2016. So love to get coordinators facing their old school, in week 1 or week 2. They're going to put in a few new wrinkles, might put in a trick play or two. And Georgia only has 4 returning starters on defense here. Upset of the year so far. The wrong team is favored. I like South Carolina 27-26.
You almost choked on that as you were trying to get it out.
Well, you never know. Georgia has a lot of talent, but I think this is the time. I think catching Georgia early is going to be about the only chance for someone to beat them.
All right, and they got the right team favored here. Clemson favored by 12 against A&M.
Well, are you sure the right team is favored?
Oh, am I not sure?
Okay, well, Jimbo knows Clemson. He coaches against them every year. I think he would have liked to have seen his defense on the field for a lot more than 48 snaps last week. In fact, this A&M defense gave up 646 yards and 55 points when they played Wake Forest last year in the bowl game. I'm not sure if Kellen Mond's the right guy. If you watch this guy, he throws off his back foot a lot. That could be a real problem here. I also think this game reminds me of Jimbo's first tough road game when he went to Oklahoma and faced a real tough Oklahoma team and got beaten up 48-14. I think Clemson's a different animal here. I think they double up Texas A&M 42-21.
Not even close. Hey, you've got some experience from your playing days out in Texas, right?
Well, I played at Southwest Texas State. I was on the team that won the Division II national title in 81 and 82. So I was a backup quarterback and punter. So did a lot of studying from the sideline.
Yes. Never played at Kyle Field then?
No, didn't play Kyle Field. Visited Kyle Field.
Yeah.
Dated a couple co-eds at Texas A&M, but never played there.
You got it. Hey, thank you. Oh, by the way, your game of the week is Florida-Kentucky. I need to mention that.
Yeah, good game here. We're going to find out if Florida can continue this 32-game winning streak, or can Kentucky maybe keep it closer, pull the upset. Just call 800-400-9741. We'll give you Florida and Kentucky for free. 800-400-9741. And like I said, you want to hop on board or check out a bunch of other free pick videos. There's some great games going on around the country. We've got Alabama playing Arkansas State, Stanford, USC, Michigan State, and Arizona State. All those videos are up and available. ParamountSports.com.
Hey, thank you, my friend. Have a great weekend. Talk next week.
You too. See you, Phil.
All right, Lee Sterling, our Sterling picks here on Sports Talk. Let me give you the recruiting before the top of the hour break. Just a few notes. Linebacker Tyrone Hopper of Roswell, Georgia, a Florida commitment, tells us that there's a good chance, a possible chance, he'll be at USC tomorrow. He wasn't definite as of last night because of transportation. So if he gets a ride, he plans to be there. He said, 110% committed to Florida, but he still likes South Carolina. He hears from Will Muschamp and Coleman Hutzler a good bit, and they just want him to come back down for a visit. He says it will be tough to pull him away from the Gators. He also plans to visit Auburn. They are in on him hard still, and he plans to go to Florida for the LSU game. 2020 offensive lineman Seth McLaughlin of Beaufort, Georgia, confirmed today that he will be at USC tomorrow for an unofficial visit. The Gamecocks will have one official visit from an uncommitted player. Well, he is committed to Mississippi State, but in terms of their class, he's not committed to them. That's Darius Washington, the offensive lineman out of Florida, is coming in for an official visit this weekend to USC. Clemson offered 2020 defensive lineman McKinley Jackson, 6'3", 317 of Lucedale, Mississippi. He's a national recruit, long list of Power 5 offers. Basketball, one-time USC target, 6'11", Brandon Stone, committed to LaSalle today. This was a guy early on, it looked like he was going to be all Gamecocks, but I think they cooled on him at some point. The communication ended a few months ago, and so he's going to LaSalle. He's from up in the Pittsburgh area. Of course, LaSalle's in Philadelphia, but he is from the Pennsylvania area. And Clemson is one of the 4 schools set for in-home visits with New Jersey guard Jalen Gaffney, according to Adam Zagoria. That visit is September 12th. He has St. John's the 9th, Xavier the 11th, and UConn on the 12th. There you go with recruiting. Check it on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. On Twitter, usually hashtag ST Recruiting. We're coming back. Will has got interviews with the folks that cover the opponents coming up next.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we get you ready for the weekend action. Georgia and South Carolina, Clemson and Texas A&M. It's now time for our opposing viewpoints. We'll start with the big game at Williams-Brice on Saturday, the Bulldogs and the Gamecocks. And to get the perspective of the Bulldogs side of things, we turn to DogNation.com and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Chip Towers, who covers the Georgia Bulldogs for both of those outlets. Chip, I'm asking you this just off the top, just because we've seen a lot of hype for this game coming in. Do you think the hype is justified, or is it just a product of the fact that this is Georgia's scariest opponent, at least in the immediate future?
Well, it's not really I told you so, but going back to, SEC Media Days this summer, right before the Gamecocks, were picked as the, I guess the consensus number 2 team in the Eastern Division. I said that's a huge blockbuster game being played for both teams early in the year. I mean, if you take these preseason rankings and prognostications for what they are, I mean, if you believe in them, then you certainly think this is going to have big ramifications on the Eastern Division race. And at the end of the day, whoever loses this game is going to have to win, twice going forward, or need that other team to, is going to need the other team to lose to going forward. And that's always a tough proposition if you're depending on somebody else to help to get to Atlanta. Georgia has some huge expectations on them this season. I think they're justified. But, all you have to do is go through the historical record to look at the way these games have come down traditionally in Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium, whether Georgia had a great team or a ranked team, whether South Carolina was ranked or unranked. They're always really close contests, or at least when Georgia came out with a win, they've usually had to fight to the skin of their teeth to come out of there alive, even when they've been a top 5 team, or South Carolina handles them pretty good because that environment in Williams-Brice can really get the Gamecocks rolling. So that's Georgia's task this week is try to keep the Sandstorm and 2001 Space Odyssey and, all that cocky craziness from getting the Gamecocks going too well.
We have not seen, at least to this point, a too deep or any kind of depth chart. Will Muschamp made mention of that during his weekly press conference. Probably will not see anything until we get the flip card on Saturday. What at least can you tell us, and I know it was Austin Peay, but what can at least you tell us about where the rotation of guys is at for Georgia, at least on offense, and how they have replaced what they've done on defense, obviously, from what they lost a year ago?
Well, the Austin Peay game was a lot like South Carolina's opener against Coastal Carolina, and there's really not a ton that you can draw from it. I mean, it was really incredible. If you think about it, Georgia played 83 players in their game. That's more than they played all of last season off their roster. And it says one of two things: one, Austin Peay is really bad. And number 2, Georgia has a lot of depth. A lot of those players weren't just going in there because it's mop-up duty, but Georgia has some really intense competition going on the defensive side of the ball in particular, as you alluded to. They lost 7 starters off of last year's national championship contender. And so there's a lot of position battles still going on at those positions. Now, the good news, if you're a Georgia Bulldog, is most of those players over there competing for playing time came highly, highly recommended. Very, very highly rated prospects, such as their starting left cornerback right now is Tyson Campbell, a consensus 5-star cornerback out of Plantation, Florida. A number 2 cornerback in the country, and there's 21 5-stars on Georgia's roster. So they're recruiting at an all-new level, but, where Georgia needs help is at positions where sometimes it's hard to come in and be great as a freshman. I think one of those is defensive back. I think another one of those is inside linebacker, and where they lost Roquan Smith. So I think, the Gamecocks, probably rightly so, are licking their chops a little bit at a chance to test that secondary with Jake Bentley and, receivers like Deebo Samuel and Brad Edwards. They've got the goods to test them, and I think they will.
So will they play Deebo straight up, or will they move the corners between Baker and Campbell?
Well, typically Georgia plays it that way, a left and a right, and they stay on that side of the field all the time. But this will be interesting though, because we all know what the dynamic playmaker Deebo Samuel is, and all respect to the Gamecocks' other wide receivers. There's just not anybody who's as big of a home run threat on any down as Deebo Samuel is. So we don't know. We don't know how they're going to play it. It's just like Will and Kirby are cut from the same cloth, and they're not dispensing a whole lot of information on how they're going to handle all that. But I would suspect they try to cover up for Tyson Campbell a little bit. I mean, I see Georgia kind of trying to play a little bit of a shell and kind of keep the Gamecocks underneath them and take what they give them, and force them to make a lot of underneath throws and runs to move down the field, not beat them deep. Because, I think the flip side of this is Georgia's offense against South Carolina's defense. And Georgia has they have some incredible speed. I've never seen the speed that they have at the skill positions or the size that they have at the offensive line right now. So, I think Georgia would be content to try to outscore South Carolina. I think they can win that battle. I doubt if that's a ploy per se, that a strategy that somebody like Kirby Smart would employ. But I think if it comes down to it, Georgia can do that. Yeah,
it's interesting if you look at these two teams. Traditionally, of course, bringing a lot of defensive of experience, and of course, from that perspective, you at least know that both these coaches have that in their pedigree. But it almost seems like an atypical match because of the fact that South Carolina has an overhauled offense, and for the first time, at least in a couple of years, comes in full strength. They did not have Deebo in the game last year in Athens, and of course, Georgia with its renewed confidence with those skill position players that you mentioned. It's an odd match for these two coaches who are mostly defensive minded.
Yeah, both these guys cut their teeth on defense. Both of them are coordinators by trade, and that's the foundation of their program. Same thing, really, when it comes to offensive philosophy. Will Muschamp has always wanted to be able to run the ball and be physical, but I think in elevating Brian McClendon and kind of go into some spread and hurry up like everybody else, he's kind of changed his tune on that. And Georgia's sort of the same way. It's just a changing time in college football. Everybody's trying to go fast. Everybody's trying to go quick, and try to leave the other guy sucking wind. That's certainly going to be a possibility with the weather conditions such as we're expecting. The flip side of that, though, is that you got to be really careful about either one, Georgia or South Carolina. If you're trying to hurry up and go really fast, you better be sure that you're getting some yardage, because if you're not, you're going to be hurrying up and putting your defense back on the field. And at the end of the day, it's still about field position and possessing the football and scoring points. So there's a fine line in between, going fast and moving the football.
Real quickly, Chip, we got about a half a minute. Special teams, McCole Hardeman should have an impact in there. How do you assess Georgia's special teams, especially the kicking game?
Yeah, this is a real X factor for me. This is a wild card matchup in the game. I really, quite frankly, don't know that much about South Carolina. I don't have a strong feeling about their special teams. Georgia's is really, really good. They're breaking in a freshman at punter named Jake Camarda, who averaged 55 yards on 3 punts in the Austin Peay game. He's got a strong leg, but he's one of those guys that he's the guy kicks and kick, not out kicking your coverage and all that. He's still working on that part. The returns games are probably a wash, with Deebo Samuel, as dynamic a returner as there is. And like I said, Georgia has all kinds of, it starts with McCole Hardeman, but they have a bunch of other guys that they're running back there. And, it always comes down to turnovers and special teams in these games. And I think both of these teams are well prepared to capitalize on that if the opportunity comes.
Chip Towers of the AJC, DogNation.com. Thanks so much. Travel safe. We enjoyed it.
All right. See you Saturday.
Up next on Sports Talk, we change course, give you the opposing view from the Texas A&M side of things as they get ready to host Clemson. Mark Passwaters of AggieYell.com joins us next on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Talk South Carolina Radio Network as we continue here, getting ready for the football weekend. South Carolina taking on Georgia and Clemson facing Texas A&M. We did our Georgia opposing viewpoint, and now we look at the Texas A&M side of things. The man who covers the Texas A&M Aggies for AggieYell.com, part of the Rivals Network. Mark Passwater is joining us here on Sports Talk. It seems that the Jimbo factor is part of the reasoning behind people giving Texas A&M a shot. Just how big in your mind is the Jimbo factor heading into this matchup with a non-conference foe that he happens to know very well?
Well, the knowledge that he has of Dabo and Clemson is a definite plus. You also have the advantage that Mike Elko was the defensive coordinator at Wake Forest for several years, so he's not exactly unfamiliar with the Tigers either. So that's a definite plus. And honestly, if you look at things, you got the number 2 team in the country coming in, you'll take any advantage you can get.
Looking at, obviously, the opening game against Northwestern State, it probably can draw as much from that as Clemson can from its game against Furman. But what, I guess, did we learn about Jimbo and how his aptitude is with the personnel that he has going into week 2? Obviously, a limited sample size, to say the least.
We didn't learn much at all, really, except that basically we figured out who the personnel were that they're going to run out there, and that's about it. They didn't run anything exotic at all, either on offense or defense. I don't think they blitzed a single time defensively. They didn't run any misdirection, play action, things of that sort offensively. It was very bland, very vanilla. What they did was they very effectively moved the ball up and down the field. They ran for 500 yards, so that's something positive for a team that struggled mightily running the football after the first half of the UCLA game last year. And basically outside of that, not much.
And looking at just what Texas A&M ran under Kevin Sumlin versus what, of course, Jimbo Fisher is part of his DNA. Something that Dabo said earlier this week was basically that, you cut open Jimbo. He wants to run pro sets, he wants to run play action, and he wants to run the football and establish the line of scrimmage. How is that going to work philosophically with the personnel that he inherited and, of course, what he's brought over here in the offseason?
Well, philosophically, it's been welcomed very much, not only by the fans, but by the players. It's funny, during the spring game, they trotted a tight end out there for the first time and the crowd went crazy. The fact that Jay Sternberger is actually a real weapon is actually a bonus if you look at it from that perspective. A&M should have had the personnel to run a spread offense, and that was certainly what Sumlin was aiming for. But honestly, they've made the transition to a pro style very nicely. The only area where they've kind of had a weakness will be fullback, and they've got the 12th man, Cullen Gillespie, taking that role on, and he's actually done a pretty good job. Outside of that, I think that on the offensive line, they're very happy to make the transition because they were pretty much in a defensive 2-point stance a lot because of that scheme. But now they can get down in 3-point stance and they can actually, push off and attack somebody, which I think they desperately need to do if they're going to run the football against anyone. So from that respect, they're happy with it. I think they like what Mike Elko's doing defensively because John Chavis was pretty much set in his ways, and he did not adapt at all. He ran his 4-2-5, and he blitzed a lot, and the numbers looked nice, but they were also giving up a lot of big plays. Elko is willing to adapt with his personnel and against each opponent. So these are things that they really needed to do for the last several years: get tougher, establish the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and I think that Jimbo and Elko are trying to do that.
Mark Passwaters, AggieYell.com, joining us here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. The Aggies and the Clemson Tigers getting set to meet for just the 5th time in their series history. Looking at the quarterback spot, Noam, we talked to you earlier in the spring about the battle between Mond and Starkel. It was pretty unclear to see how it would shape out. How surprised are you that Mond has taken the reins?
Not particularly. I think when you and I talked, we discussed the fact that if it's close, that Mond would probably get the nod because he's able to do a few more things with his feet. He makes the offense a little bit more versatile. Is Starkel a better passer? Yeah, probably. But Mond has improved exponentially since last year when he lost the job when Starkel returned from his injury. He's much more decisive. He's a lot more accurate. I think a lot of that has to do with the tutelage of Fisher. It does not speak well about what Sumlin and Noel Mazzoni did. but he looks like a much different guy. He looks like a real quarterback and not a guy kind of guessing about what he's supposed to be doing. So, I think things were very close, but Mon did a very good job the last couple of scrimmages, not turning the ball over. He was very accurate. His completion percentage was high. And I think that was enough for Fisher to trust him and give him the reins.
Of course, we are continuing to kind of look at all the different pieces and where they go. Trevion Williams, of course, is a big key if they're running the football like they did last week against Northwestern State. I doubt that they'll have the kind of numbers, but how would you assess Texas A&M's ability to run the football against this front four, which has been obviously highly touted from Clemson coming in?
Oh, it's a very big concern. They and Auburn are going to be the two toughest defensive fronts A&M faces. This is maybe the best front that they've faced in a long, long time. And, A&M is going to have to at least keep it even if they're going to win this football game. If they allow Clemson to do what they have done against many opponents and basically control the line of scrimmage, then it's going to be very difficult for them to stay in this game because they do not want to become one-dimensional. They don't want to throw all the time with Mon because that kind of defeats the purpose of having him in there. So they've really got to do a good job of, at least coming out at a 50-50 rate. They did a great job last week against Northwestern State, but you're talking about a very different animal here. So, it's going to be a real challenge, but I think that's the key to the game.
Mark Passwater is joining us here from AggieYell.com. You mentioned the addition of Mike Elko. His pedigree from Wake Forest and Notre Dame obviously precedes him. And like you said, we really don't know what to take out of the Northwestern State game. Texas A&M's moniker over the last couple of years has been soft as Charmin on defense, unfortunately, Mark, for them. How would you expect that transformation to personify itself on Saturday night?
I think they're a lot tougher, and I think that's the mindset that Fisher brings, and they've really emphasized that since day one of fall practice. They've got spring practice, honestly. They've got their best four up front starting by moving Kingsley Kiki outside to defensive end. They've now got him, Dalen Mack, Justin Matabuike, and Landis Sturm on the field at the same time. These guys all have talent. Mack has come a long way in a short period of time. I think Matabuike actually has a shot at being a first-round pick. Kiki's very versatile. He's been the best defensive lineman that they've had for a couple of years now. And Durham's the sack guy. So if they can hold their own up front against just about anybody. The linebacker core is thin, but the starting three of Hines, Alaka, and Dotson are good. I think that, front seven-wise, they're much tougher. They're smarter. And, honestly, my boom and Kiki outside, they're a lot bigger. And I think that that's basically a reaction to the size that you see in the SEC West and the fact that people want to establish the run first. And obviously that's something the Aggies want to do now. So they're just kind of joining the pack.
How do you expect them to handle the multi-quarterback look that Clemson brings with Bryant and Lawrence both expected to play per Dabo Swinney?
I think that it's going to be real interesting to see how they try to pressure those guys. They're going to bring a bunch of different looks. I think one of the keys is going to be Hines as the rover. If they can keep him on the field a lot, he's going to try to get into the backfield frequently. One thing, though, with Hunter Renfrow, they're going to have a matchup problem. You obviously don't want him on a linebacker, so does that mean you bring Deshaun Caper-Smith in more as a glorified nickel? They've got to find ways to make these guys think when they come up to the line of scrimmage, confuse them. That was one thing that we didn't see against Northwestern State because there wasn't a need for it. They just ran a base four-man front and didn't blitz at all. So I think that Elko has seen these guys. He knows what they have to do, and I'm sure that he'll throw a bunch of different looks at them. Whether or not they're successful is a different story.
Mark, we're looking forward to the game tomorrow night in Kyle Field, of course, getting ready for it here on Sports Talk. We'll see you down there. Appreciate it.
No problem. See you there.
Always good to reunite with my guys in Texas. And again, we will have full coverage for you on Sports Talk this weekend from both Texas A&M and from Columbia. Let's go racing next with Monty Dutt and the full Monty on NASCAR. We'll recap Darlington and get you ready for the Cup race in Indianapolis, the final regular season race before the NASCAR playoffs. That's next on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
The latest on this weekend's race is around the corner. The full Monty on NASCAR is next. This is Sports Talk.
Welcome back into Sports Talk on this Friday night. Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes with you in Columbia. Will Pelagic on the road to Texas A&M to cover Clemson and Texas A&M. It is now time to shift gears and talk some NASCAR racing with Monty Dutton. The full Monty on NASCAR here on Sports Talk, coming off the big weekend, the big Labor Day weekend at Darlington, Monty, where the crowds were great. The weather turned out to be really good, and I thought it was a really good race too.
Yeah, it was a beautiful night. One of the things I thought that was interesting is that they had that beautiful purple and orange sunset at Darlington. And I was thinking to myself that naturally in South Carolina, the sunset would be purple and orange. So this was one time where God didn't make the sky Carolina blue.
Hey, don't tell that to Gamecock fans.
I'm not. I'm just telling it to Chapel Hill fans.
There you go. Well, at least it was black at night, so you got the Gamecock black of the garnet and black there.
It went from Clemson to South Carolina as the night went on.
And as the night went on, the race got more and more interesting. We had the long opening run of caution-free racing, and Kyle Larson ran off to the big lead. He dominated the first stage, but we got to the latter moments of the race, and things got very tight. There were a number of incidents on the track, and then you had that final race off pit road that made all the difference.
My favorite thing of the whole season happened at Darlington. In the end of the first segment, Larson was trying to put a lap on Austin Dillon, and Dillon blocked him and bumped him and stayed on the lead lap. Nothing wrong with trying to stay on the lead lap. But in the second segment, the same thing happened. Austin Dillon was almost a lap down, and he had his lap. And when they went out on the last turn, Larson went way down the track, made a spectacular move, and beat him to the line by inches. And I thought that said so much about Larson, of him being an old timer, because he wasn't going to let that score remain unsettled. And I thought that was that was my favorite thing of the whole season. And of course, people who listen to this show know that I am extremely impressed with the virtuosity of Kyle Larson. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why he doesn't win more often, because I think his skills are spectacular. And I think he lacks the maturity of Kyle Busch, but that he has the talent of him. So I would have liked to have seen him win, but I also was happy that Brad Keselowski won, because he hadn't won a race this year. He'd never won at Darlington. He'd never won what is known as one of the absolute marquee events of the year. And so I don't think the driver's career is complete without a victory at Darlington. I was sorely disappointed that Tony Stewart never won at Darlington. Rusty Wallace never won at Darlington. And so I thought I was happy with the outcome, even though I would have liked to have seen Larson win too. So I thought it was a glorious weekend at Darlington. I'm prejudiced. I've been going there since I was about 11 years old, and I'm prejudiced, but I really do think it's the greatest racetrack in NASCAR, and I am seldom disappointed by a race day.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Do you think Larson is doomed to be the Harry Gant of this generation?
Well, my suspicion is he's still awfully young, and by the time it's all said and done, he will have quieted all that. I think that I feel the same way when Chase Elliott finished second 8 times before he won. I really never thought that it was a matter of him choking in the clutch. I just thought things didn't work his way, and I think that that's the way it is with Larson. And Larson is still a burgeoning talent, and that he is going to have a great career by the time that all is said and done. And we will all look back, and these little difficulties will be just a footnote.
Well, of course, on the racetrack, Keselowski won by over a second, but on pit road, after the last pit stop, he won by just a few inches over Larson. That made all the difference. What happened, A, on pit road to get Keselowski out front, and then B, why was he able to pull away and win by a comfortable margin?
The performance of Keselowski this year has been good, but it's been good enough to keep himself up in the points by being smart and not win that many races. But one thing that hasn't changed for Keselowski and his teammates, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, is that they work for Roger Penske, and Roger Penske is a spotless, careful, top-notch organization made up of experienced people who know what they're doing. And the fact that they would have a faultless crew chief, a pit stop, and a driver who knows how to get on the edge speed limit without exceeding it. And they won that race because, in the heat of battle, they got a little bit extra out of their effort on pit road. And it wasn't a bad performance by Larson, but he just got beat. And that proved to be all the difference because once Keselowski cleared him, maybe because he wasn't out front as he had been all night, and his car was just not as strong when he was buffeted about by turbulence. But the fact is that Larson dropped back to third. So little things mean a lot, and sometimes little things make all the difference. And you started out, you came very close to quoting Robert Frost in The Road's Not Taken. That has made all the difference. And that and truer words were never spoken by you or me or Robert Frost.
Well, I can promise you, I was not thinking of Robert Frost when I was talking. It's the full Monty on NASCAR here on Sports Talk. So it's Indianapolis this weekend, which, people kind of yawn about NASCAR at Indianapolis because the racing there just has not been great. But it is important because it's the last race of the regular season, and you look at the standings related to the playoffs right now, and you see from 16 up, Ricky Stenhouse, Alex Bowman, Jimmy Johnson at 14, and then at 17, Ryan Newman, 18, Austin Dillon. Somebody could get bumped out of those 16 that are in. Okay. We have an abrupt end to our audio there for some reason. One of those nights where little gremlins are popping up into the recording and into the computer. But anyway, Monty went on to say that we had to talk to Monty early because he's got high school football tonight. Monty went on to say that as far as Indianapolis is concerned, we talked about the fact that race has gotten a reputation of being boring here in its most recent years. And he pointed out that early on, of course, everybody was jacked up about Indianapolis, 300,000 plus there to watch even qualifying back in the early years. And, the racing does get strung out there. It's such a long track, and the passing is, I guess the aerodynamics of the situation does not lead to a lot of great passing and things of that nature. And people, they lose interest, but still the drivers love to win at Indianapolis, and it's kind of neat to have Darlington and Indianapolis. I guess the two oldest tracks of their kind in the country, Darlington being the first super speedway and Indy having been built back in the early 1900s, the two oldest kinds of tracks that there are for that style of racing. Kind of neat to have them back to back. The other important thing here is the fact that this is the last regular season race towards the playoffs. And so you've got 3 or 4 drivers who are in very nervous-y situations going in, including 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson, who is on the brink of missing the playoffs. He currently sits in the 14th position. He is 19 points ahead of number 15, Alex Bowman. And then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. sits in the 16th spot, and he's only 15 points clear of Ryan Newman. The point is, if somebody outside of the top 16 wins the race on Sunday, that's going to have an effect, of course, and it's going to push somebody out who's currently in. So it will be hard to imagine, guys, a playoff without Jimmy Johnson.
Well, Jimmy
I would say so.
Jimmy has had his share of championships. Even in those years we thought he wasn't going to make it, he slid in there and stole another trophy.
Well, we shall see. He has not, unless they're just, they can't be stonewalling this entire season. They have done nothing really this year. No wins. At times, not even competitive. I know they've had some bad luck with wrecks and things of that nature, and an occasional engine problem or something else. But to be shut out, that's just not Jimmy Johnson like. Okay, we'll be back. We've got GB3 coming up.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
We are back with you, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Very busy Friday night, heading into the football weekend. Let's calm down and play some golf. Let's tee it up and hit it down the middle. Let's get some birdies and very few bogeys around the state of South Carolina. We welcome in George Bryan III to Sports Talk. It's still hot. It's still humid. Great weather for golf, and we're down to the next to last tournament in the FedEx Cup. What do you know about Xander Schauffele from your time out on the tour with your son? And he's a young guy. I'm sure you've had a chance to maybe rub elbows with him a little bit.
Oh, I certainly do. I have, and he is a spirited young fella with a great set of parents, very well mannered. And the one thing that he does, he has a lot of fun playing golf. Absolutely no fear. And as he proved last year, at the end of the year, he can win. And it would not surprise me at all if he did.
Well, he's got the lead. He's got the lead at 13 under. Justin Rose is 11. Keegan Bradley is 10. Alex Noren is 10. Ricky Fowler's 10. Hideki Matsuyama's 10. Rory and Justin Thomas and Jason Day, Billy Horschel, Charles Howell III, they're at 9. Very tight leaderboard. Tiger's at 8. This thing's going to be pretty exciting. And the galleries are just huge. Of course, they're following Tiger. But if they're there to see Tiger, they're there to see some other people as well.
Yeah, that golf course, they do a great job there. And it's a golf course that will, as the scores indicate, will yield plenty of birdies. And it's, quite frankly, it's a lot of fun to watch. Last year, Wesley ended up getting a single pairing for the last round. He was first out and played in an hour and 29 minutes. So it's a fun golf course to watch golf. I didn't see much of the telecast last year because I was there live, but it wouldn't surprise me if they just kept the pedal to the metal out there. I'd love to see Tiger and Roy just keep it going. Justin Rose, obviously, he just got it dialed in at the right time. No surprises there.
I love those wide fairways.
You know, TV makes those things look really wide. Now, Phil,
I need wide fairways. I need a very wide fairway.
You drive it down the highway, man. You don't need a
You're right. If the highway's running by the hole, it'll go down the highway. Yeah.
Hey, and speaking of the highway, I've got to say that I'm coming down. I'm on 995 now, but I did pull over. I've got to recognize I just passed the Myrtle Beach exit, and the Lady Wildcats were over last week, and they won the Blue Jacket Invitational in Aner by 25 shots. Last year, you might remember we talked about it briefly, and I'm sure we'll talk again about the Wildcats. They won the state championship last year, the 4A, by 49 shots. Well, they just demolished the field at the Diamondback Golf Club with won by 25 shots. Isabella Rawl shot 142. Molly Hardwick, who won the Azalea, we featured her last week. She finished second, one shot back of Isabella. Now, Isabella is in the class of 2022. She's only a sophomore this year. And speaking of girls, we're going to continue to highlight and feature the girls. Abigail Shemp is ranked number 1 in the state. She's from the class of 2020, and she lives on Daniel Island. Emily Dunlap is number 2. Anna Morgan is ranked number 3. Phil, we'll continue to talk junior golf. You go back 20 plus years, and that's where this show and this plug got started. So I'm going to turn it back over to you. And
well, let me throw this at you real quick before you get away. You know, the college golf season now is underway, and the always important tournament down in Georgia at Dalton, the Carpet Capital Collegiate, sort of the traditional start. They're playing at the Farm. I'm sure you know that golf course, the Farm Club, actually in what's called Rocky Face, Georgia. And Clemson right now After today's round, the Tigers go out and shoot 2 over. South Carolina shoots 6 over. Tennessee leads at -8. So we're underway with the college golf season as well.
Oh, and I love the farm. The folks there do a great job. That's Bill McDonald's hometown and used to be his home course, and he's the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. It is. I love college golf too. I'll be looking forward to following that one. The farm is some kind of a. You're talking about some narrow fairways.
Mm-hmm.
Those are tough to hit there. Always in great shape there.
All right, George, you have yourself a great weekend. We'll talk to you next Friday, my friend.
See 'em high, but shoot 'em low.
Absolutely. William Nottingham had a 72 for Clemson today. He was not out in the forest.
Snooze.
Snooze. Get it, Nottingham? Isn't that the old whatchamacallit?
Yeah, but the sheriff isn't.
Sherwood Forest is the one I know of, going with Robin Hood.
Well, what's Nottingham? Isn't that also Robin Hood?
No, that was the sheriff of Nottingham.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sherwood Forest is Robin Hood.
Bryson Nimmer, rather be nimber and be quick. He shot 72 as well. I'm trying
Man,
for South Carolina.
You are limping to the finish, man.
Gamecock leader today with a 71 was Will Miles. Shoots 71. No, we know it's not Pelagic. All right. Thank you to George. Okay, except for the computer puking out a couple of times tonight, all is good. Looking forward to this weekend. Just saw a snapshot from TigerNet, Will, showing the Tigers arriving, and they are attired in Western gear.
They are. They have the cowboy hats on. I think that at least the 4 defensive linemen are wearing them, and a couple other Tigers as well. They always like to kind of have a little theme when they go on the road, and it's weird. The loose nature of this club, I think, is very interesting to kind of monitor because of the fact that, like we said, they're battle tested. I know that you had the stat about how they play in 85,000 plus environments, but somewhat of I would say the majority of Clemson's not negative history, but just lack of prosperity has been rewritten, at least over the last 3 to 4 years in the college football playoff era by Dabo Swinney. It seems that anything that was a minus on Clemson's resume, or at least in people's immediate thoughts, has been erased like the movie Men in Black with the little tracer there that basically mind scrambles people. Clemson has been able to thwart any kind of negative mojo that's come their way.
You're saying no more Clemsoning.
That's bull crap, according to Dabo Swinney, is what he says.
And don't ask me that anymore.
Okay, Nick.
As long as
Nick.
As long as the other team ain't wearing crimson.
That's true.
That's right. That's right. All right, so we are set. So just to recap from the three of us, what we think will happen. I think Gamecocks win straight up. I think Clemson covers. I've reconvinced myself. Clemson, I'm taking Clemson to cover.
Because everybody sat here and talked bad about A&M. That's why.
I was listening to the experts that we have here, and I trust what they have to say. And you say what?
I say Clemson wins by between 2 to 3 scores, and I think Georgia wins by between 14 and 17.
Mm-hmm. But what? You said Georgia wins between 14 and 17?
Yes.
Pro?
No, I'm taking the points. I think it's going to be a close game.
We're talking, though, we need actual numbers here.
Actual numbers?
Yeah.
I can't give you actual numbers.
I mean, is South Carolina going to win straight up?
No, I think Georgia wins 24-20.
And Clemson?
Clemson named the score, but they will win by more than 17 points.
High school scores real quick. Hartsville 7-0 over Conway. Conway could be 0-4 tonight. Hannah Pamplico leading McBee 20-3. It's Timmonsville 7-0 over Marion. Aner with a 16-0 lead on East Clarendon. Woodland 6-0 on Battery Creek. Spring Valley up on Richland Northeast 7-0. And Colleton County leading Orangeburg Wilkinson 13-0. Orangeburg Prep 7-6 over Florence Christian. Will, look forward to your coverage tomorrow.
And yours as well, Corn.
Thank you. Reminder, high school scoreboards tonight, 10, 10:30, and 11. Otherwise, check us tomorrow as we cover the games, the Gamecocks and the Tigers. We'll see you Monday night here on Sports Talk. I cannot believe that here I was bragging about the whole damn thing. But see, I transferred